Since the brothers of the German house had nothing to lay their heads on in the Prussian land, which had long since been transferred to them, they thought to proceed from afar so that they had the Vistula River in their midst for protection against the Prussians. They asked Duke Conrad to build them a castle. He gathered his people and had a castle called Vogelsang built for the brothers. There the brothers stood up to the immense number of heathens with few armed men and sang the song of sorrow and melancholy, for they had left the beloved soil of their homeland and had gone to a foreign land where they were to suffer for many years. From a fertile, peaceful and tranquil land, they came to a land of terror and desolation, full of hard struggle. According to the 14th century chronicler of the Teutonic Order, Peter of Duisburg, this was the situation in which the Knights of the Brotherhood came into hostile and barren land that they had sworn to conquer in the name of the Christian mission. And for what did the brothers do this? The chronicler Peter let his brothers ask the Almighty God. To this Peter replies, "The Lord will turn the desert into a garden of delight, and the wasteland into the garden of the Lord." With these prosaic words, we welcome you to our video, in which we tell the story of how and why the Holy Teutonic Order acquired and conquered the land of Prussia, one of the last holdouts of paganism in Europe. This video is sponsored by our YouTube members and patrons, who get 2 exclusive videos weekly, not available anywhere else, for their kind support of our channel. You can join their ranks to watch more than 160 videos, including our series on the Pacific War, Punic Wars, Persian Wars, Spanish War of Succession, Russo-Japanese War, North African Campaign of World War II, History of Prussia, Italian Unification Wars, Risorgimento, Albigensian Crusades, and much more. Click the link in the description or pinned comment to get the exclusive videos, early access to all public videos, our schedule, wallpapers, access to a special Discord server where we're very active, and much more. Thanks for supporting us, we couldn't be doing it without your help. Initially, the main task of the Teutonic Order was to help secure the Christian possessions in the Outremer, otherwise known as the Crusader states of the Levant, where the first castles of the Order were built or acquired via donations. However, the Order also had ambitions to establish its own domain outside the Crusader states, where the already established Knights Templar and Knights of St. John prevented the Teutonic Order from gaining too much land or influence. Thus, from 1210 onwards, Grand Master Hermann of Seltzer attempted to secure a base for his order, and therefore a livelihood for its many members, by establishing his own domain under its direct control. After his election as Grand Master, Hermann von Seltzer proved to be a skillful politician and diplomat, becoming a close advisor to Emperor Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire. Moreover, he was also a welcome guest at the Papal Curia. From this position, Hermann repeatedly acted as a mediator between the Pope and the Emperor, who repeatedly came into fierce conflict with each other. Most members of the Order, including Hermann von Seltzer, were recruited from the Ministerialen in the east of the German Empire. Ministerialer, or ministerials, were a lower noble class that had arisen in the previous century from the servants of the king, as well as other ecclesiastical and secular grades, and had now themselves attained legal status as lesser nobles. This class sought social advancement for themselves by emulating the higher aristocratic circles in a chivalrous way of life. As a result, and due to economic necessities, numerous ministerials and lesser nobles joined the Teutonic Order and were expected to be provided for and given an appropriate task. To fulfill this, Hermann von Seltzer initially attempted to establish a dominion for his order in Burzenland, located in present-day Transylvania. This territory was part of the Kingdom of Hungary, and the Hungarian king Andrew II had invited the order there in 1211 to further colonize the land and secure it against attacks by the Turkic Cumans and other groups. Most likely, the Teutonic Order was chosen over the other knightly orders because of the German origins of the Queen Gertrude of Hungary, and the influence of German advisors at the Hungarian court. The Order sent Master Theodoric along with a few knights, who initially began to fulfill the mission given to the Order successfully. Several castles were built, and the colonization of the land with settlers from the East Albian regions of the empire began, as some military expeditions into Cuman-controlled regions were made. However, the Order soon fell out with the Hungarian clergy in Burzenland, who were refused payment of dues. Moreover, the Hungarian nobility also came into conflict with the Order over its possessions, fueled by conflicts with the German advisors at court. Newer research furthermore points to the improvement of relations between the Crown of Hungary and the Cumans that made a civil mission of the latter impossible, This development could have been a problem for the Order, as it may have lost its legitimacy as protectors of Christianity in the area. In addition, Hermann of Sulzer attempted to reduce the legal ties and obligations between his order and the Kingdom of Hungary through the invoking of his papal privileges starting in 1222. Thus, conflict with the Kingdom of Hungary grew. In 1224, von Sulzer took a step further and put the Order's possessions in Burzenland under direct papal overlordship. This led to the expulsion of the Order from Hungary in 1225, despite the protests of Pope Honorius IV. In the winter of 1225–26, shortly after the Order was expelled from the lands of the Crown of Hungary, the Polish Duke Konrad of Mazovia approached the Teutonic Knights, asking for military assistance against the pagan Prussians. The Duke's own attempts to subjugate the Baltic-speaking tribal groups in the Kulmerland, neighbouring his possessions, had not only failed, but these Baltic heathens were now making excursions into his possessions. The Prussians were a people of the Baltic language group, ancestrally related to modern-day Lithuanian and Latvian peoples. They were divided into various tribes that lived in the Baltic region east of the Vistula as far as the Memel. Prussian society was organized into a small noble class and a large number of unfree peasants who lived in scattered settlements, farmsteads, and small fortresses. In the south, their settlement area was separated from Greater Poland by dense forests, the so-called wilderness or wilderness. Despite attempts at missionary work and crusading operations since the time of the Second Crusade, the Prussians were still predominantly pagans in the 13th century. The cultural and political pressure from the Empire and the kingdoms of Denmark and Poland was present in their forested homeland. However, partly due to the inaccessibility of the area, the Christian mission was a slow process. The pagan Lithuanian and Estonian people, further east, also continued to support the Prussians in their resistance to missionary work for a long time. In the course of their plundering raids, the Prussians also advanced more often into Masovian territories, thereby disrupting the forces of Konrad of Mazovia. Konrad was striving for the position of Polish senior duke, and he had no power to spare to deal with the pagans on his northern border. Thus, his solution was to invite the Teutonic Order to solve his problem for him. However, Grandmaster Hermann von Sulzer did not want to immediately heed the Duke's call. The Grand Master had become cautious after his order's expulsion from the Burzenland by force of arms. In order to avoid a repeat of that incident, von Sulzer litigiously had the transfer of the Kulmerland to his order secured in documents, not only by Duke Konrad of Mazovia, but also by Emperor Frederick II and Pope Gregory IX. These endeavours culminated in the so-called Gold Bull of Rimini. According to more recent research, the document was not drawn up until 1235, but referred to discussions and agreements made between the Order and the Duke in 1226. The document was backdated when it was issued in 1235 to the year 1226. It was drawn up by Grand Master Hermann von Sulzer and the Emperor's Chancellor Petrus Divinea, a lawyer trained at the universities of northern Italy who was proficient in both secular and canon law. In the document, Emperor Frederick II authorizes the Teutonic Order to attack and subjugate the heathen Prussians, with the aim of protecting the Christian mission in the region. He also confirmed the donation of the Kulmerland by Duke Konrad I of Mazovia, who had issued a charter to the Order in 1230. The Emperor also decreed that all areas of Prussia that the Teutons were able to conquer would henceforth become their territory. This land was handed over to the Order by the Emperor out of his power. According to the Golden Bull of Rimini, the Teutonic Order was allowed to possess the land as lord, as stipulated by the Jura Regalia, the law of ruling land in the Empire. Furthermore, the Order was exempted from all services and levies. For the period after the conquest, the Order was granted numerous sovereign rights for its possessions. For example, it was allowed to establish markets, levy customs duties, establish trade routes, receive the Burgregel, strike its own coins, erect castles, and decide on money collections. In addition, the Order was to be the supreme court in its lands. Overall, this gave the Order an immense litany of privileges and freedoms that most other noble landowners in the Holy Roman Empire did not have at the time. The Golden Bull thus gave the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order the rights and powers of an imperial prince, without elevating Hermann von Sulzer and subsequent Grand Masters to this status. From the perspective of the document, the Grand Master of the Order was understood as belonging to the Empire, but formally, they and their lands in the Baltic were not part of the Empire. Nevertheless, the emerging possessions of the Order were thus equally protected against other rulers, as their claims were checked by the authority of the Emperor. The expertise of the jurist Petrus de Vinea is most likely evident here, as he succeeded in creating this particularly skillful regulation of the relationship between the Order's possessions in the Baltic and its status with the Empire. Concerning the side of the Church, Pope Gregory IX also issued the Teutonic Order with a written assurance of previous verbal agreements regarding the status of the Order's possessions and rights in the Papal Bull of Rieti in 1234. This included the fiefdom decrees issued in 1216 and 1220, which released the Order from all obligations to secular lords and placed the Order and its possessions, including those yet to be acquired, solely under the control of the Pope. Through this, the Order was theoretically free from the Emperor's grasp. Hermann von Sulzer had managed to leverage the patronage of the two largest powers in Latin Christian Europe, and in so doing, laid the foundations for the formation of the independent rule of the Teutonic Order in the lands of the Prussians. To acquire the new lands of the Order and to fulfill its duty, Master Hermann Bulk crossed the Vistula with 7 other knights of the Order and their entourage in 1231. They built a castle near Thon and placed the village of Kulm under the rule of the Order. The construction of castles in earth and wood became a pattern of the Order while subduing the region. These fortifications allowed the Order to quickly build secure bases for defense against the Prussians and for the further conquest of the country. The Order mostly followed the many waterways of the region, for the rivers made it easy to transport supplies and presumably also prefabricated planks and wooden parts for the construction of fortifications. Naturally, the newly erected castles offered security, and soon settlements formed around them. The castles were also built near the former Prussian fortifications or settlements so that the local population could be controlled. In some cases, the indigenous population was forcefully resettled near the Order's castles. By building fortifications along the Weser, the Order cut off the Prussians from weapons and armor manufactured in the west, giving the brothers a decisive military advantage over their enemies. It is often pointed out that the Order's technological superiority over the Prussians was a huge contribution to its military dominance, despite its low numbers. For example, the Order had access to crossbows, much more body armor, siege engines, and a superior breed of warhorses. The latter became a closely guarded asset of the Knights. The Order also succeeded in gradually isolating the various Prussian tribes and subduing them individually. The whole endeavor to conquer Prussia was financed by the Order's possessions in the Empire, especially from the Order's possessions in Silesia. However, the help of the King of Bohemia and the Margrave of Brandenburg was welcome support to the brothers' cause and should not be neglected. The King and the Margrave were interested in opening up the eastern region for the Landesausbau, the economic and manorial development of the land. It is also important to note that the brothers of the Order were always too few in number to successfully subdue the Prussians alone. But the Order had acquired multiple papal bulls to preach the crusade for the Baltic in German lands. Thus, many nobles from Central and Northern Europe heard the call and went to the Baltic. These crusaders, who supported the brothers in their fight against the pagan Prussians, were an important part of the Christian fighting strength in Prussia. After initial successes in conquering, subduing, and allying with the different Prussian tribes, by the early 1240s, the Order controlled large parts of the Prussian lands. Thus, the brothers began to develop their control over the region. But the Prussians rose up in 2 revolts against the rule of the Order. The first revolt arose after the Order's defeat against Alexander Nevsky in 1242, and when the Duke of Pomerania attacked the Order's lands in 1243. He himself was a Catholic Christian, and as such entered into an alliance with pagans to fight the Order. It should therefore be noted that the direct interests of a Christian prince were able to push any religious convictions into the background. The same applied to the Order, which occasionally allied itself with pagan Prussians when it helped the Order's goals. The myth of the homogeneous struggle of the Knights of the Order against the pagans is thus becoming a myth of older national and scholarly traditions. The first Prussian uprising ended with the Peace of Christburg in 1249, negotiated by the papal legate Jakob von Lüttich. In the terms of the treaty, the Free Prussians were given their personal liberty. Moreover, they were granted admission to the clergy, including ordination to the priesthood and knighthood for Prussian nobles. Moreover, the Free Prussians who settled on the Order's lands were to be treated like new German settlers. This demonstrates the moderating component of the Christian mission. This component was particularly emphasized by the papal legates, who demanded lenient treatment of the heathens, as it proved a more stable basis for their conversion to Christianity. However, these tempering voices should not obscure the brutality of the conquest. Up to the 15th century, the brutal treatment of the pagans by the Order was a point of criticism against it. The condition for all of these rights in the peace treaty was that the Prussians recognized the Order as their overlords and did not apostatize from the Christian faith. Nevertheless, many Prussians abandoned the religion they had been forced to convert to and rose in rebellion against the Order in a revolt that lasted from 1260 to 1273. However, not all tribes in the region joined this war, with those in the Kulmerland and along the Weser remaining loyal to the Order. Once the Order had put down the uprisings with the help of prominent crusaders such as King Ottokar of Bohemia, the Order was now able to punish the rebels and reward the supporters of the Order in accordance with the provisions of the Peace of Christburg. This was done without having to take the moderating provisions into consideration. Already in the phases between the uprisings, the Order began to organize the conquered land according to its interests and to subject it to intense rule. Thus, the Teutonic Order firmly established itself in the land of Prussia, eventually assimilating the native Prussian people, so that today the name Prussia is not only associated with Germans, but with the German kingdom that eventually birthed Otto von Bismarck and the modern German state. As we have seen, the Teutonic Order's acquisition of the Burzenland was everything but a straightforward story of state building and conquest in the crusading spirit. It had an elongated story of its setback in its first adventure in the Burzenland, and therefore legal protection and assurances were required before the initial conquest was started in earnest. Its status within the ruling apparatus, and especially its status in regard to the Holy Roman Empire, had to be settled before a lasting rule of the Order could be established. During its conquests of the lands of the Prussian, the Order's technological superiority, logistics, and the helping hands of its lay supporters, ranging from rulers to more simple crusaders, were the staples on which the Order's initial success was founded. More videos on the knightly orders of the Middle Ages are on the way. To make sure you don't miss them, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.